Hello, students and members of the BookTube/HorrorTube community. It is I, Coach Stroud, finally back with another book review after a long absence. Sorry about that, by the way. And I am here to bring you one of today's most awesome, chilling, amazing modern horror classics, a review on the book PENPAL by Dathan Auerbach. Yeah! On this episode of Coach Stroud's What to Read While Quarantined. I'm super excited. I want to start by saying I got my Cobra Kai ugly sweater on. It is amazing. If you haven't noticed ever before, I am a huge Karate Kid fan. Been one ever since I was a wee tot. And yes, I am looking forward to season 4 of Cobra Kai coming out. Super stoked. But back to the music, not the music. Come on, man. Back to the book. I gotta tell you right now. I've told a lot of people about this book, and we recently read it in class, and it was super awesome. And I told my students, I said, this is one of the best horror books I've ever read in my life, and I'm not lying about that. I've read tons and tons and tons, if not hundreds of horror novels. But this is by far one of the most creepiest, scariest books I've ever read. And I'll get into why, but I gotta share it with you. So as I said before, Dathan Auerbach's PENPAL. Now, when I first came across this book, my sister-in-law gave me like a Kindle e-reader for Christmas one year, and this was the very first book I downloaded on it. And I think it was on sale for like 99 cents or something like that. And I was like, sweet, I'll check it out. I read it, and it blew my mind. It was absolutely chilling. Absolutely chilling. I then went and I was listening to the No Sleep podcast, and they had a whole read-through of the original Reddit stories that were posted, and that was incredible to hear it in audio form. So if you like this book or want to get a shorter version of this book, go to the No Sleep podcast. I listened to it via Apple, and it was amazing. I've read this in class one time before and just recently finished it for a second time with my students, and they were absolutely bananas for it. Why? Because Dathan Auerbach is the man. That dude wrote such a wonderful character that he never names because it makes you feel like you are a part of the story. I got to back up a little bit and let you know that I have contacted Dathan Auerbach about talking to my class about this book, and he was super kind and generous, and we sent him some questions. My class sent him some questions, and he answered them all for us in a very awesome, detailed video, and my class went absolutely nuts for it. I'm telling you guys, it was incredible. So first off, thank you very much, Mr. Auerbach. Appreciate that so much. Oh, super props. And one of the questions that my students asked was, why is the main character not named in this novel? And Mr. Auerbach answered with a brilliant answer. He wrote it in a form, and I'm going to paraphrase sort of what he said in the video interview. He wrote the character with the idea and the concept that anybody could simply put themselves into that character. And when I thought back about that, when I heard him say that on the video, I was like, that's exactly what I felt the very first time I read this story. I literally felt like I was the character. And I've read thousands of books, and very rarely do I actually feel like the character is me. I always feel like it is somebody else and that I'm seeing a snapshot of their life. But in this case, I literally felt like this story could be my story. And that's just amazing writing right there. So the story is basically about a gentleman looking back at his past and realizing that the events of his past are actually all connected and mean something greater than he originally thought, and which is super cool. And it's great because you read, these started off as short stories on Reddit, and then he built upon them and put them out together in the novel here. And so when you read these stories, you're getting glimpses of his past and his history, and you see how they beautifully intertwine with each other, and it leads to this awesome, spooky, creepy ending that left my whole classroom shook. Like, no joke, they were freaking out. They loved it. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. So our main character starts off by talking about this balloon adventure that his class was doing. It's basically a way for them to meet the community and understand how big their community is and how big the world could be. So they take these balloons, they put their information on them in hopes that people will write back to them, and then they release them out in outside their school. And they're all in kindergarten, so it's really cool. And of course, the project is very successful for a lot of the students. That, people are writing in. Well, our main character here, he gets a bunch of pictures, and it's kind of weird. And like, he doesn't get letters back; he just gets pictures. And it's really, really interesting when you think about it, because again, it one thing leads to the next, and then there will be another story where Dathan will reference something that happened in the past, and then it'll all come together and tie together. That leads to the next part of the story. It's super beautiful how it's written. But what's really cool is that's basically what starts the whole, situation within the story, is this releasing of the balloons. And it often makes you wonder throughout reading the book, what would happen if this main character would not have released his balloon that day, or if he would have released it a little bit earlier or a little bit later? Would the events of the book change? Just at that one right moment of when he released his balloon, that set into motion all these events. A second before or a second later, the whole book might not even existed or happened, and that's super awesome. Now these are short stories in the chapter forms. It's basically short stories, all piled together, and they're creepy as all get out. The first one, where I believe it's called Footsteps, where he wakes up, the main character wakes up footsteps. He wakes up in the middle of the woods, and he has no idea how he got there. And he's like a 6-year-old kid at this point. And he's thinking to himself, okay, so one, how did I get here? Two, is this connected to issues or experiences I've had back in my house, where he makes comment to sleeping on bunk beds, and he knows he goes to bed on the top bunk, but he wakes up the next morning and he's on the bottom bunk, and it's like, what happened there? So it's really, really neat, the ideas that are getting pulled immediately into this first short story. And I don't want to spoil anything too much, so I don't want to spoil the book, but I will maybe spoil this first part of the story, and I'm sorry if anybody's alarmed by it, but I want to get you pulled in here. He finally makes it back to his house, and he's terrified. And again, he's 6 years old, stuck in the woods in the middle of the night. He's freaking out. He finally makes it back to his house, and his mother's there. She grabs him. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're home. You can't ever do that again. Don't ever leave like that again." And he's like, "How'd you know I was missing, or whatnot?" And she's like, "Well, by the note that you left." And so he sees the note, and he sees the paper, and he says, like, "That's not how I spell my name." He's 6 years old, and you know how 6-year-olds, as us educators can tell you, they don't always know how to write their name properly, but this main character does. And he realizes that he didn't write that note. You know how sometimes you can do something and think or not do something and think maybe you did, or do something and totally forget that you did it? That's that situation right here. And so the wheels are spinning. Did he actually write the note? Did he forget, or did he not? So that gets you kick-started into the book, and it just goes on and on and on. Now, what I do want to say about the characters is I love the friendship between our main character and his buddy, Josh. Josh is another, he's not a main character, but he's like, he's next level. The friendship between the two of them is absolutely just beautifully written. And it honestly, the first time I read it, I remember it made me long for my friends growing up in my neighborhood. I had one friend that lived down the street from me for years, and then he moved off, and then I had another, and so I ended up becoming friends with another kid in the neighborhood, and we were really good friends for years, and then he moved off, and it was like, that feeling, all those emotions, that frustration as a kid of not being able to control things. It's all in here in the book. And that's just makes it even more relatable. But the other thing that really sticks out, the creepiness, the scariness of it, is when the pieces of this mystery start getting put together throughout all these short stories, and you start realizing that something is not connecting here, that something is totally off, and these memories are hiding something much bigger. It's freaky. It is super freaky. And one of the things I love about this book is it's not incredibly gory. And it's not, I mean, it's not full of all these horrific things that are happening. They're just small, subtle things. One thing that leads to a little bit bigger thing that leads to a little bit bigger thing. It's crazy how all this intertwines together so beautifully. And it is really, really freaky. Dathan Auerbach does an amazing job of literally sending chills down your spine. I cannot recommend this book enough. In my opinion, it is the freakiest modern classic. I am using that word, classic, super classic. Now, again, some of you might be saying, oh, coach, you're just saying that because you contacted the author and he was cool with you in your class and stuff like that. Yes, that was awesome. And again, thank you, Mr. Auerbach. You were amazing. But at the same time, I've loved this book for years. I've read it in my class before, and I cannot get over how wonderful it is. And I will be reading it again to my class next year because it's just that darn good. It is that amazing. Do yourself a favor, get PenPal, order it on Amazon or anywhere else you order your books from. Dathan Auerbach, amazing, amazing title. He also has another book out called Bad Man. I have not read that one yet, but it is on my list, my TBR. And yeah, until next time, everybody, thank you so much. Sorry it's been so long since the last book review, but yeah, hopefully y'all are doing well. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that funness. Let me know if you've read this book. Have you read PenPal by Dathan Auerbach? And if you have, tell me what you thought. Are you as in love with it as I am in my classes? Hopefully you are. Until next time, deuces, we are out. Peace.